Good morning all. I'm Amira Fuad from Egypt branch. I'm honored to have some of the Bahrain branch tutors joining us via the YouTube link I sent earlier today. And I'm happy to have some of the English language unit Egyptian tutors along with us. Now let me start with the overview of the session for today. We'll get to know something about the nature and the structure of the information gap exercises related to the Garnet series. Why is syntactic grammar very much related to the design and the structure of the exercises, especially the grammar-based ones in the series, and how different it is from the structure with a general English course. We'll get to brainstorm some of the differences between the English for academic purposes, one famous series, the one that we're using, and it's at our hand, the Garnet series. We all know that it is for academic purposes, and this is very much clear with the kind of reading and the type of writing that we have and the topics discussed and the listening tracks as well. We'll get to know some of the theoretical framework underpinning the series and its design. And the one good news is the amendments and the modifications done on the online learning resources. This is something I'm going to start with. The reading skills needed for English for academic purposes, students, and of course the writing skills. Of course, the two last ones are the much emphasized skills along the branches in the Arab Open University. Let me start by sharing the modifications and the enhancement on the online listening skills. And it is recommended, it's actually a must, not only recommended, that we advise and guide and draw the attention of our students to use the online resources. Whether we do that as an exercise in class, we assign some of the activities to be done at home, the student gets some interactive exercises, i.e., he gets to know the error or the mistake he made. He gets to get a score of what he did, or the summation of what he did wrong and what he did correctly, and he gets to identify the errors. Let me start by this, and the website is skillsinenglish.com. If you can see on the screen that we have the progressive skills in English, the general ones that are used for different purposes, yet we have the Arab Open University Special Edition. None of the series books are closed for anyone. Our students as well can use any of the series editions, but we should direct them to use Progressive Skills in English Arab Open University Edition, all right? Now, let's choose level 1, and this is corresponding to the level of 099 in our curriculum, right? And this is the kind of series or the level that we're using as a sample for our training. The student will press enter, and here it goes, all the resources for the student. We have reading practice, listening practice, grammar practice, vocabulary practice, theme resources, and even the transcripts for the listening he has and for the activities. We even have the teacher resources where he gets to have flashcards. He can be in PDF forms. Let me share one with you. Reading, for example, in a PDF form, he can really use these vocabulary that are related to the theme and use them as flashcards for activities in the classroom. Again, this is open for the students and not closed. Let me go back to the student resources, and we try our luck with the listening. If you can see, it's theme divided, and we have listening that is added to the CDs and the listening topics and the listening tracks that we all have, whether the tutor or the student, in our books, right? So it needs a flash player to play it. Let me use, for example, vocabulary practice. again, it needs a flash player. Grammar practice, again, flash player. All right. Reading practice. I'm trying other skills. Another browser? All right. Choose text. Read the text. Okay, so it needs a flash player. Again, this is the text that he's supposed to be working on. We're trying another browser because this browser does not have the flash player in order to have the listening tracks or any of the activities chosen from the skills in English online, having them working, and I want to share that with you. Is it working now? It's not working. All right. Will it work? All right, until it works, I need to tell you that we have experimented ourselves during the training with the resources, the online resources that have been emphasized, enriched, and upgraded from the team or the side of the Garnet training, and we found them completely interactive. They respond to, I made an error, I need to see the mistake, I need to redo, I need to skip one of the activities, and there are numerous activities each student can take on his own, following his own pace, or to be assigned that exercise at home from the tutor himself, all right? And let me tell you that directing our students to the use of the online resources helps build that autonomy of the task and the independence of the learner as we're trying to build and we're trying to enhance among our students, all right? Now let me share the agenda again with you. I'm sorry that the browser did not work, but you know now how to use it. I want to start with recognizing activities that have to do with gap information filling exercises, and we have numerous of them. Let's refresh our memory with the 4 activities or the 4 skills that we have in our series. What are they? Reading, writing, the most emphasized one for the AOU, speaking, and listening. You know very well that we have an integrative approach among the 4 skills, in the sense that sometimes to start setting the tone for the topic, a student needs to listen to a track related to the reading prior to the reading. That's what we call scaffolding skill. Why? Because in order for the student to be able to know some information, build some vocabulary, recognize some immediate sentence structure or syntactic structures, he needs to build his information and knowledge, and this is driven usually from the listening track that the student gets to listen to at the beginning of the skill. Now, let's identify some of the abbreviations that we have. PSIE stands for Progressive Skills in English, and this goes for Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, 099, 111, and 112, all right? However, the other abbreviation is ESU, which stands for English Skills for University 1 and 2. One stands for EL 097, while number 2 or series level number 2 stands for EL 098. These 2 levels are not offered in Egypt. I don't know about Bahrain branch, but I assume that they're not offered there as well. So we'll be using sample of the exercises offered to us in the English skills, English progressive skills. Primarily, we'll focus on the 099 level. I will start with an activity that is found in your folders. which is a typical information gap activity, okay? Please open page I'll tell you exactly the page. It's page 78. Yep. Not this one. You're given to you as handouts. They're page 72 to 73. This is a typical example of listening and some activities following. This is the listening section in our book. And the listening section has drills and activities, and we need to identify the types of activities that we have. The question is, can you spot any of the activities on these two pages that has information gap, and a student can fill the information gap? Page 72, you find it in the middle. 72, 73. Yes?
It starts with 78.
Yes, it starts with 78, and as we haven't had
The listening here. You don't have it?
It starts with the speaking.
Alright, no problem. It starts with 78, right?
Yeah, speak cross.
Okay. Again, on page 78 or 79 even, which is the speaking section, can you spot any of the activities or the drills found in the book that mandates or asks the students to fill in the information gaps? Yes or no? Can you tell me which exercise is it? Can you tell me which exercise is it? Which? Which?
The first one.
The first one,
Yeah.
there are photos, and actually the topic is the use of technology, right?
Yeah.
And the photos provide the student with different types of inventions, and he has to match the vocabulary items given in the box with the inventions on the photo, right? This is a typical information gap, and it reinforces and it builds some vocabulary. Some of the students will not be familiar with all the items provided for him or her, and he has to either work in pair or wait for the guidance of the tutor in order to provide him with the right vocabulary item for that choice. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer to have this activity working, to have the students working on that activity individually or in pairs? Why so?
For lower level, this will enforce interaction, and this will give them more self-confidence.
Excellent. And something else as well. Lower level students lack that much of a self-confidence to work independently, right? And they feel far more comfortable when they work in pairs or even in groups. And there are pros and cons for that. How is that? Because sometimes I place a weak student with a moderate student and a strong student. Sometimes I have in mind that the weak student will have to work because he cares for his self-image, right?
Yes.
But the opposite might happen in the sense that he refrains from answering because he has a very strong student, okay? And usually this skill of dividing the students into groups does not come unless or except after the passage of some time in class and so on. So you pinpointed an activity that has to do with the information gap, okay? Now I'll ask you another question. Look at page 79. There's an activity that says real-time speaking, and before it, there's a practice of conversation. Read through these two activities and tell me, does the progressive skills in English adopt a deductive or inductive methodology? Deductive, yes. So there are so many drills on the same topic that starts with the listening, as we all have seen, identification of vocabulary items, filling in missing information on a conversation, and until we reach a freer type of activity, as you got to see the last one, which is number D, which is a freer type of activity that asks the students to incorporate the previous activities into real life conversation, right? So deductive, it means that I reach the optimum and the sought for knowledge at the very end after the student passes through scaled processes and steps. Do we all agree to that? Yes? Now, again, I need to remind you, we have speaking, listening, reading, and writing. But there is, after the writing part, there is one important component of our book, which is the portfolio. Have you seen that? You use it with your students. Why is the portfolio important?
To trace the achievement of the students and how.
First, it's a culminating section. It's a culminating section for all the 4 skills, right? And it highlights the achievement of the student on his own. Most of the skills and the activities are either done under your supervision as a tutor or in pairs or in groups, and they are given feedback, right? Now, when we reach the portfolio, all these 4 skills are integrated and the student is left to his independence and the knowledge that he was able to accumulate all through the theme with your aid or with the help of the students and so on. I mean, grouping them in pairs and so on. That's why a very important skill is really needed, and I really like that when I was told about it. Think, pair, share. Most of the exercises need this process. The student has to ponder about the question himself, and because you paired him with another student or you gave them the chance to sit in groups, he has to pair up and to share his findings about the kind of activity he has and so on. And one important fact that we usually forget about, we don't wait until we receive a feedback from our students on the activity. This happened to us during the training, and we had a question mark. Allah, she's giving us this activity and she's not waiting to have or to receive the feedback. This loses the optimum aim of an objective of having this activity done in the first place. انت مقعدانا ليه؟ And why are you giving us this activity? It's untimed, which is wrong, and we don't know the objective behind this activity. Why do I have to do this activity? This has to be very clear into the minds of the students. Lee, because he has to be within the map of your class, in the sense that he knows that by doing this exercise, he is moving to a next step. If this is not clear to him, he will lose on the next step, probably the 3-4 steps to come, all right? So please have our exercises timed or activities timed, get the feedback and provide the feedback for our students on them. I'm not saying that we have to do all the activities in order. On the contrary, we have to assign some of the activities because we cannot accommodate to all the activities in class, especially those for the workbook as well, right? So please assign the students some of the activities to be done at home, yet ask or provide a feedback for them, or else you won't do anything, okay? Great. So, as we've just seen, when we looked at some of the information gap activities, we found out that skills are taught separately, then integrated in the portfolio, right? Students, because we have so many drills, get a second chance, or test, teach, test. How is that? I messed up with the first activity, right? Yet I have a chance on the same topic for the second activity. I may do it correctly, right? And each skill includes both top to down and bottom up activities. Of course, the structure of the activities is deductive. I want to pause here on the fact that the skills have transferable identity or nature, okay? This takes me to a very important thing. What are the major differences between general English and English for academic purposes? I mean, many of us have taught series for general English, right? And you know very well that the Garnet series is English for academic purposes. Can we pinpoint the differences? Yes?
I guess the writing part is the most important and marks the
You pointed a very important point. One of the major differences is that we write formal pieces of writing and the English for academic purposes. Some of these are our essays, case studies, and reports, right? While on the contrary, for the general English courses, you're requested to write a letter, right? A message to a friend, and so on and so forth, right? One major important thing, the fact that the English for general English gives you an immediate skill to use. Yani, if I have a conversation with somebody at the restaurant to teach me how to order from the menu and how to ask the waiter to place an order and so on, this is an immediate life situation. I cannot apply the vocabulary at the restaurant to the vocabulary at the clinic or at the physician or at any other different context. It's an immediate context with its immediate vocabulary needed now, right? However, for the EAP, we need note-taking, right? Because it helps us on our research, and we do that in writing. Note-taking checks the spelling, صح? So when we check the spelling, our writing is better, right? When we take the grammar, the embedded grammar, in the four sections of the book, we need the grammar syntactically in order to write more complex sentences needed for our essays and so on and so forth, right? So these major differences cater for the fact that we teach our students English for academic purposes because they have transferable structure or characteristic that they take to other skills and cater for other purposes, right? Yeah. Now, one important theoretical basis, and this is the author's adaptation. They chose this theoretical framework among others, like for Noam Chomsky, for example, in order to base and build and structure their exercises. What is that? It's called the zone of proximal development. The core in essence is the zone where the learner can do unaided, and this is usually comes at the beginning. This usually comes at the beginning of all the exercises, where the student has the simplest exercises. He's very much comfortable doing them because they have to do with the schemata, what he already knows, right? Then we move on progressively to a much difficult kind of exercises where he needs the aid of the teacher. He cannot do it. He needs guidance. That's why I pair them. That's why I put them in groups. That's why I need to give them a feedback on the kind of activity I gave them, right? And there is a learner's area where he cannot do anything. This usually happens in which activity? In which skill? Listening? Speaking sometimes, reading most of the time, right? Because the complexity of a text can have different levels. It could be the complexity of a concept. It could be the complexity of the grammatical structure. It could be the complexity of the embedded sentences where the subject is not there, right? It could be the complexity of the division and the organization of ideas. Sometimes the learner cannot do anything about it. How would I help my student? I need to place him always in that nucleus area where he can have parts or knowledge or information that he knows, and that's why we encourage the students to do scaffolding. You know the meaning of scaffolding? يعني أنا مش عارف يعني إيه fridge، مش عارف. Okay? I show him the picture, right? طب I show the picture بس أنا مش عارف I pronounce the French correctly. How would I do that? I'll ask him, open your dictionary. Try to listen to the sound. And this builds his schemata and independence at the same time, right? This is one of the theoretical frameworks the book is adapting and so on. Now let me move after the identification of that, of the information activity, information gap activities in the course. Do you have any questions on that? Yes? Okay. Let me move to another section. What's wrong? مش عارفة أقفله. Oh my God. She. I think we discussed something about German English versus what is syntactic grammar? Do you know anything about it? What is syntactic grammar? Yes.
I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
This is related to the syntax, I guess, branch of linguistics. So this is what beyond grammar, or what is beyond grammar, a little bit.
Okay. We brainstormed some of the differences between general English and academic English, right or not? طيب هو general English has to do with a syntax,
No.
a money,
Communication. Just conversation.
accent, morphology. It has to do with the word form more than the word order, صح?
Yes.
In our English language grammar is built or is based, and correct me if I'm wrong Dr. Rania, is based on morphology and syntax. عايزين نعرف word form which is morphology يعني أنا بقول beautiful. I need to have a superlative form from beautiful. Can I add any other suffix to it? لا ما اقدرش, right? But if I have the word tall, I can say taller. So the word form is different, right? Because I've added a suffix to it to give me another degree, another level, sorry, not a degree of the adjective, right? This is morphology, right? Now, another level or another basis for our grammar is syntax, which has to do with word order. So many students do not. ليه احنا دايما بنقول SV صح؟ WO word order in the correction of our writing all the time. عشان there is a different pattern between the Arabic language and the English language. But believe me or not, and we're going to see that in the next activity, the brain can really see, can really scan a syntax. The brain really knows what is syntax. And let me tell you, you know very well, do you remember when we were talking about the grammar, the fact that it is embedded in our book and so on? You find grammar in speaking, صح? And you find grammar in writing, and you find grammar in the listening, right or not? And morphology as well, because sometimes we see the word divided into the several syllables, صح? That it has in order to ease pronunciation for our students, صح؟ طب تعالوا نشوف ليه السنتاكتيك grammar is very important. هو جاب لنا a reading passage. This is the reading passage. I had to put it for you. And this is an academic reading passage, and it has to do with the self-esteem in the classroom. A topic very much related to us as student tutor in a classroom, right? Can you please go through please read it. Can you read it? I'm sorry because this shows I cannot do anything about it even when I say display. Please read it. I have several questions before you read. Do you think this is a difficult topic or a difficult passage? If so, what makes it difficult? All right? It could be different levels, at the vocabulary level, at the grammatical level, at the sentence structure level, and so on. Please pinpoint what makes this passage a difficult passage, and we're talking about the 099 students, okay? You have 3 minutes.
Vocabulary.
One important major difficulty is the vocabulary use. Yes, eating.
Long compound sentences.
Accent, long compound sentences. Some of these sentences are embedded. You can't see the subject, but the subject is omitted, and we can see a reference to it. But the subject itself, I mean the pronoun. One important sentence: if they receive positive feedback from others, and they are. صح? The repetition of subject, because we need contracted forms, because in order to avoid repetition of subject. Very good. The concept itself. I mean, do you think most of our students for the 099 will understand يعني ايه self-esteem? لا خالص. What else? The gerund form, which is the gerund form. كتير respecting. في ايه تاني؟ Developing. Right? The gerund form is quite confusing for some of the students. The students' mind can identify a lot more easier. الباترن الكلاسيكال القديم SVO صح؟ SVC اللي هو stands for complement, right? But these are very complex sentences for him, right or not? طب بصوا, that's the actual. You've pinpointed some of the difficulties involved, which is the fact that it's a difficult concept, it's the vocabulary, the tenses, the long sentences and clauses, and of course the gerund and so on. So that's exactly what makes the text difficult, right? But do you think the students will be interested to go through or to read such a passage or a text or not?
Actually, it depends.
Depends on what?
Depends on the context itself. So that if you try to personalize the issue, like for example, how would you learn better? For
Yes.
example, just taking it and referring back to the experience of the students.
Access,
themselves.
which is the same as the nucleus,
Yes.
the schemata. What does the student already knows? Or to show them a short video, or I think there is a supporting listening track on that part of the lesson that has to do with how do students, they listen to that, how do students manage their tasks at the universities, especially when they have to deliver presentations and so on, right? So that's why I really appreciate the fact that we have listening prior to any new concept in the book. Lيه? Because it paves the way. It sets the tone. It gives an introduction, a proper introduction about the topic they are going to tackle all through the theme, for example, right? So these are the most important things that makes that passage. And he's identifying the difficulty. He said that the longest sentence is 30 and the shortest is 12, and we have here the average of 22. There are missing subjects, as we have seen, referencing clause embedded. That's the exact with the highlighted ones, and this is where we get to see the missing verbs and the pronouns that stands for verbs. شوفوا كم they omitted, and this is very difficult for the student to identify. عشان كده we need to start, especially with the 099 students, with احنا عايزين sentence pattern flat, non-complex, SVO or SVC, right? And there's a big difference between the EAP and the general English language, I could identify the sentence pattern through a reading passage, right? بس احنا في general English we identify usually the sentence pattern or the grammatical structure through a dry rule, صح؟ Put on the board and we drill on that, صح؟ Sometimes يعني correct me if I'm wrong, we all find the past perfect participle and ما اعرفش ايه حاجة perfect و participle برضو obsolete. We don't use that in our daily lives anymore. Not even the British people themselves, right? But yet in the general English courses they teach. هما بيقول لك هنا ان 80 to 85 of academic and technical English is present, uses the present tense. 5 to 10 uses past, including the past. These are academic statistics. 5% is every other verb. Only 5% يعني هتستعمل future progressive. I will be going to my uncle or I'll be visiting my uncle today. You see the point? حاجة تركيبة مش start using already, okay? فهو بيقول لك إن even the academic English simplifies the pattern of the sentence structure to guarantee and to maintain a better understanding of the text. بصوا, when I occupy and when I keep the mind of the reader busy with deciphering sentence structure, the only sentence structure دي فيه ايه? I really make an obstacle. I hinder the processing of information of the text, right? عشان هو عايز to decipher the sentence structure, so the content is blinded for him. So I cannot engage my student on these two different levels, okay? عشان كده some of the drills and some of the activities you will find on the website, you missed this part. أنا بحط simple sentence. Children feel frightened. S V صح؟ C complement صح؟ It's an adjective صح؟ وحاطة له حاجات to make and to enable him and to enable his mind to identify a far more complex sentence. We're gonna see that in a bit. ممكن نحط often فين؟ ممكن نحط with low self-esteem فين؟ ممكن نحط of revealing their feelings. So children with low self-esteem often because the adverb has to come before the verb it describes. Often feel frightened of revealing their feelings. So هو لازم يعرف what's the basic sentence structure first, SVO, عشان to fill in the gaps and make it more complex sense. هنشوف ده in a minute. بصوا دول. بصوا. Look at this. Look at this sentence. The man I saw when Tim took me to see that new showdown in Leeds was here a moment ago. Complex sentence, صح ولا مش صح? Where is the main verb in that sentence? ها؟
Was.
بالظبط.
Was here.
طب where is the main subject? The main noun, which is the subject? The man. Okay? And the complement? Exactly. Look at this. Thank you very much. The man was here. That's the basic, simple sentence. And I actually use the complexity of the language syntactically to insert modifiers, embedded sentences, and so on. Look at other examples as well. عشان كده هو بيقول EAP versus general English. Does the general English use syntax? طبعا, and uses morphology. But it's a yes to the use of syntax when it comes to English for academic purposes. So he's saying here, word order is more meaningful than word form. عشان ليه? If you remember, I really don't penalize the writing of the student when he writes, this man was tallest, right? I understood something, right? came. ليه? You see the point? I penalize him because the word order is incorrect. فعمل لي very incorrect, very much incorrect sentence structure, right? جميل. So I penalize him on both. طيب ايه syntactic code that I need to use with my student? SVO, C for complement, A for adverbial, right? S, where I have a noun or a pronoun to start the sentence with. V for a verb. Object, it could be a noun or I met him, صح? Complement, it could be a noun, an adjective, or a preposition, adverbial, adverb, or preposition, right? And these are the codes applied on sentences. We left. مشينا. Complete meaningful sentence, complete structure, right? It's SV. يعني هنا كمان بيتعلم transitive and intransitive verbs, okay? Alright? How does the brain know syntax? This is really interesting. بص. The sentence starts with the horse. ماله? Raced. Past the board. Fill. Where's the main subject or the main noun or the subject? The horse. فين الverb? فين بس purely هو وقع, right? That's the predicate. That's the predicate of the sentence, right? So actually I don't need all of that. I need the horse fell and that's it. The same applies to the car driven past the barn. Crashed. Driven past the park, barn, I don't need it. I need the main verb, crash, as I need the main verb here in the horse, which is fit. And في حاجة غريبة, you see, we might not be, language has a sense, you know that. We might not be students of linguistics, صح? But our brain is trained, even the 099 students. هو بيقول لك لا الجملة دي فيها حاجة غلط بس مش عارف ايه. صح؟ هو بيقول لك اني I can really identify the mistake but I cannot explain it. Make use of that, okay? So the brain knows syntax, and that's for sure. These are examples of the drills that really helps the students, and they are on our workbook. In our book and workbook. In your book, what could be a verb that comes connotation with the word book? Eat, give, right? Take,
Bring.
open, bring, right? طيب دي مهمة؟ مهمة. عشان ليه؟ Because I prepare the student and return with him. When I do such exercises with him, I bring him to the nucleus. So you remember the schemata, what he knows already, right? So أنا بعمل إيه؟ And that's an activity حصل لنا during the training. He stopped talking. Pause and then the book. Open. Page. Turn. You see? And it's very fruitful and people were racing. يعني, for example, he gave us a similar sentence like, I came to, we said the class, the room, the training, today. Found nobody. So what's the transition, the connector? Sorry, the connector. However, I found nobody. You see the point? You prepare the mind of the student with the knowledge that he already has, and it was very effective, by the way, because he had an incomplete paragraph for us, and we kept, do you want, نقول however, عايزنا نقول however, so the mind is engaged in a very constructive guessing game. منين عرفها الجاسنج جيم دي؟ From the information that he has already stored. هو عارف اني مع كلمة book I need the verb open or close, right? طيب مع a noun like the sentence, which verb do I need? Write a sentence. Form a sentence. ايه تاني؟ Correct the sentence. So you see, وهو بيعمل that kind of exercise, you re-emphasize information into his mind. And sometimes he writes this, so the spelling is corrected. And sometimes you do that on the board. So you ask the students, copy that, صح? And it's a very effective thing because the more senses you engage with the student, هو شايف, you can see, he uses his hand to copy and his mind to focus and his hand, and he checks spelling. The more emphasized the skill is, right? Okay, so these are some of the activities that bring grammatical connotation, and students really, I find them appealing to the students because it's like a race. هو عايز to predict what the tutor is going to say. Try it in class. Pause, but of course after telling them about the objective, I will pause at several points and for you to predict what am I supposed to be saying in that slot, grammatical slot, right? Okay. And there's another type of activity where he chooses whatever comes in a sentence. There is a very large lake, there are very high mountains. بس أنا أقدر أقول there are a very high mountains. No. So he crosses out the ones that he feels like they don't match in number or with the subject and so on. These are some of the examples that you're already familiar with and they are in the book, right? The more exercises students do in that form, the more they are encouraged to identify the basic sentence pattern, okay, that we agreed on. Some of the exercises even include word order, exclude some of these, and they are very popular on our exams as well, right? بصوا sentence دي. Very a sentence that starts with the engineer, an article and a noun. But I modified the noun with the computer engineer. Don't tell me that it is an adjective, صح? No. And apposition. يعني ايه apposition? If there is a noun phrase, right? And I need to refer to the same noun phrases. Again, I use apposition, right? It's a matter of referencing to the already used one. Right, Dr. Rania? Okay? So, the computer engineer, me, Alan Turing. I need to make my sentence more complex. Of Cambridge University, I used a prepositional phrase. You see, I am trying to fill in gaps in a complex sentence. I'm spreading it, okay? And I used an adjective here. The famous computer engineer, Alan Turing of Cambridge University. Still no predicate. Still no predicate. Melo, the predicate answers the word. What happened to him? Melo, what happened? صح? Right? Now, this is a very effective way of having the student identify any few slots that can make the sentence more complex without being afraid of adding more items and being at the mistake, doing a mistake with the sentence, right? Okay?
This is what the book sometimes writes under extra information.
Extra information, exactly. And this is an example on the use of quantifiers at the beginning of the sentence. وهم عندهم a very fixed place. They usually come at the beginning of the sentence as an introductory phrase. Call it what you want. Many of the students, a few of, ما أعرفش إيه, so little of. These quantifiers, they quantify the noun that comes after them and they give you a basic information. Are they omittable? Oh. They're extra information, right? Yeah. So these are some of the activities that we can use with our students to identify a complex sentence pattern. اللي هي مش بس SV or SVC predicate, okay? Alright. Any questions so far? Yes? Now I need to go through the most emphasized skills in the university, which is reading and writing. Correct me if I'm wrong. You could see in the book that the syntactic grammar is also incorporated in the reading and the writing, right? Okay. Yeah. I'll start with the reading. What's reading? Can you give me a definition of that? What's reading? What is reading? Tell me everything that comes to your mind. I blew it up when I was asked that question. What's reading? Reading is reading.
Going through a passage and
Sorry, Dr. Lee.
to go through a passage and try to understand or perceive some.
Excellent. To go through a passage and try to understand the content. Excellent. Very basic and very informative definition. Anything else?
Just a message from an author. He tries to convey a message. with regard
So you're
to
trying to
the
persuade me that before it is a reading text, it's a written text. صح? And the written text caters for three things. The audience, the reader, i.e. the reader, the purpose, because you're communicating a specific message to this audience or reader,
position of the
صح?
author.
And it has an organization, right or not? That's why we form or we write our essays following specific organizations. Now I use a compare and contrast and use a compare and contrast. If it is an argument, I write an argumentative one and so on. So before it is a reading passage, it's a written text. Very much so, okay? The basic definition, بس بصوا في حاجة ناقصة definition of the reading. The basic definition is, as Dr. Ramsey said, reading is the ability. It's one of the four skills. To draw meaning from the printed page and interpret this information appropriately. Are there levels of deciphering or understanding the text? Definitely. Apart from the reading skills, which are skimming, scanning, and reading for details, صح? But there are levels of deciphering or understanding the text. إيه أول حاجة?
The keyword or the thing.
Yes, the identification of vocabulary, automatic identification. أنا عارف إن that spelling stands for the word behavior, right? So I spotted it automatically. I read it out loud. ليه? It's stored in my schema. So the very basic level of reading is automatic identification of written items, vocabulary items. What's the second level?
Try to guess or to understand words which
Division.
are not known for them. Try to guess something.
Yes, the vocabulary that I could identify, they have a meaning, right? The items. And I need to understand how is that passage being organized. The concepts, see, how are they being discussed? That's why we usually have this question for our students. What is the writer trying to do? Is he trying to compare? Well, is he illustrating or explaining the concept? Well, is he arguing and presenting the two arguments? So understanding the overall organization helps store information in our brain. صح? Let's
The passage which is argumentative, narrative, descriptive.
exactly. طيب, the definition that we just had about the reading does not specify the language proficiency. يعني ما بيقول لناش إني which student at which level he can really understand the draw meanings from a text, a printed text. We don't know. This is not real. This is not set for us. بدليل إن I can give an EL 112 student a reading passage and his colleague another one. He does well with the reading passage, the other does not. Right? So they are placed in the same level, yet the language proficiency is an obstacle for one of them, right? Then, طيب ما قالت لناش كمان the background knowledge. It did not specify the processes required or the working method. And this is part of the role of the tutor, because sometimes you know the meaning of a text in parallel, and this happens usually in writing, you know that. I want you to write about this concept. I know very well that you don't know anything about concepts, صح? That's why I'm providing you with another article that helps you discover and scaffold about that concept in order to be able to write something about it, okay? How is that going to be done in our reading passages? We said that the first level is word recognition, the second is discourse organization, the third is processing information. I am on page, you have the book, right? So you have the handouts, right? Do you have page
83.
83, 84? Can we identify one activity for each? One activity for each on page 83, 84? One activity for each. Word recognition, discourse, organization, and processing information.
The vocabulary box and finding connections.
Sorry?
The vocabulary box and finding connections for word recognition.
أيوة. And number B?
Discourse organization and
Number B, هو عنده 3 paragraphs. He gave him 3 statements. 3 of them only fit to be topic sentences. So when I match the topic sentences correctly, this means that I could understand the content of that specific paragraph, hence the overall organization of the passage. How about the processing information? Processing. Look at the next page. Predicting. بصوا number C كده. Predicting information, that's a high level of processing. ليه? Because when I understand, reading is a skill. Do you know the difference between a skill and a strategy? When is a skill turned into a strategy? When it is intentionally used numerous times. Intentionally, it becomes a strategy. ده معناها ان it has become a part of his two brain tools, right or not? لما اقول للطالب predict information, this means that the organization of the passage became at the tips of his fingers. So he can really predict the organization of the next information to follow. You see the point? So he was able to process information to understand and detect words and vocabulary items automatically, and was able to depict or understand the organization of a text, right or not? And this is all in the book. And again, the book adopts the deductive method of teaching, right? ليه؟ هو أول ما بدأ he started with a brainstorming activity. صح؟ أنت اتكلم. You really want to engage the shy students, as you've said before, right or not? And you want to test or check what do they already have in mind, the schemata thing, in order to add on it. Whether you will add on it as a tutor or you will ask him to do some more scaffolding. يعني we all have smartphones. We all encourage our students that why don't you check the meaning of that word? When you check the meaning, put it in a sentence of your own, right? This is the application. Comprehension turned into application, right? جميل. So, بصوا بقى. One famous exercise on word automatic recognition. هو شايف? Can you see number 6?
Yeah.
أنا أقدر automatically to guess on the missing letters or not? A behavior. And I spell it correctly, right? And this is what we want our students to be able to. عشان he does two things here. He identifies a vocabulary item and he spells it correctly. And these are 2 needed skills on the writing, as we're going to see in a minute. Easy? Individual. It took us a minute to it's صعبة برضو, right? It took us individual ولا independent. You see, حاجة right? So students would race really in order to fill in the gaps and so on, okay? It can come in different forms. Word with omitted letters. It can come in spelling patterns, prefixes. What is the missing prefix here? I want to turn this word into a noun. فهتحط له ايه؟ MENT ولا NESS and so on. This is sound and morphology. صح? Word form.
Yeah,
right? Morphology. Syntactic grammar is everywhere with us, right? And the next one is the discourse organization. We've done already the activity on page 83 where the student can really identify the missing thing. We were taught when still so. I advise my students in even core courses to do that. You know, scanning and reading for details, right? What do we have the same classification of skills in our Garnet series? Skim through, scan the passage for. في حاجات زي كده. Skim through the passage, scan the passage for. Do we have this crystal clear in our Garnet series?
Yes. Sometimes. Yes.
In some
articles,
yes.
In some articles, but I bet these are not the first things that the student comes across or faces on the reading section. صح؟ ليه؟
Because sometimes they do not have the necessary knowledge to apprehend and to go for more
Exactly.
critical skills like this.
Even if he finds the word, even if you ask him to read the same word in context to figure out the meaning of that word, لا, he cannot do it. Especially for the 099 students, right? He requires, or the student requires from you a little bit of space for him to think individually and to share what he has done with the students to gain confidence, right? But if you throw him into hot water, find that word for me and try to guess its meaning, read before and after. That's what we call context. That throws the student into hot waters and you get him out of the comfort zone, which is what we have already seen, the proximity of learning, right? What I know already, right? Type, what am I supposed to do, or the student supposed to do, before, during, and after? Before, we have some brainstorming activities, صح? To brainstorm specific concepts related to the topic under discussion, صح? And this is where they listen from you as the tutor and from the input of their colleagues or peers, and they form an initial picture or an initial idea of هو ايه اللي بيحصل? What's going on, صح? And having a purpose for reading. You read for a purpose. يعني I can give them, do you remember the self-esteem passage? I can give that self-esteem passage for a different purpose. Our purpose, identify the embedded sentences, pure grammar, right? Identify the topic sentence for each paragraph, right or not? Organization, right? Identify the key concepts that the passage is discussing. Content, right or not? Okay? During focusing attention while reading, monitoring one's comprehension, sometimes a student is given time to read and go through. That's why I'm telling you, feedback and elicitation is very important. ليه? Because I can give an activity and I give time to the students to read on their own. So ما قراش وأنا ما عرفتش إنه ما قراش. How did I discover that I did not share any feedback with them? In order to have volunteer students, and I would see how far did they go with reading and so on. So I did not know that هو ما قراش and he did not do the task. There has to be time task and a feedback given after each task, okay? After understanding and summarizing, and these are key concepts. Sometimes I prefer to write the summary of the passage, even if they are 2 lines on the board. وأقول للطلبة copy, because again I engage them into several skills, note taking, spelling checking, need for the fact that they might incorporate this for a further activity that has to do with the writing and so on. عندنا في ال 099 the personal, the I statement, صح? And there is a whole unit and the writing activities on how to write a personal statement. And before that there are drills, how to speak about yourself, what do you do when so and so is asked and so on, right? This is a typical activity taken from a general English course, alright? Again, this is another activity no, it's not from New Midway. It's from our Garnet. Okay? Technology for developing word. One important thing is the brainstorming. When you activate ideas, then you move on to predict information when you master the structure of the reading comprehension and so on. So the conclusion is the notion that a person only has to read and read a lot does not really turn out to be sufficient for students' reading development. Because they might have read, but they got 5% of the overall content of the passage, or 5% of the overall organization that they're supposed to master. Which I know sometimes we need a model. And it's there in the speaking, they have a model and they imitate the model. And in the writing, they have a model and they imitate the model. Okay, so you might not have grasped that much. Okay? So effective and focused reading instruction does make a sentence. Who gives the instruction? You. As the tutor, you. انت عايزه تقرا ليه؟ يقرا ليه؟ يقرا نفس التكست. To identify difficult vocabulary, sometimes we do that. To identify gerund forms, sometimes we do that. And I'll take away the topic sentences from each paragraph. And you predict. This is a step further in the process. You predict, can it be this and this and this? Jumble the text and ask him to provide a logical order of the paragraphs that are not organized. So you provide the instruction and you provide the focus for the reading, okay? On the different levels that you might be using reading passage for, okay? This takes us to one important thing, which is the writing, okay? We asked what is reading, so what is writing, Dr. Reed?
Dr. Amina, I have a question regarding
Sure.
the reading part. My question is regarding the reading passages in the book, specifically in level 3.
Yes.
We have some reading passages which contain vocabulary which are not appealing to students, which are a little bit boring.
Yes.
And you were talking about the difference between English for academic purpose and general English.
Yes.
In level 3, for example, we have passages about internal combustion engine, living organism, photosynthesis. So I'm just wondering, what are my students going to benefit from this vocabulary, from these words? And sometimes I try to apply the strategies of before,
During
after,
and
and
after.
during such, and they are not appealing to my students. So in
Yes.
this case, how I'm going to deal with such passages which are not appealing, which are boring for students, and all the time they are asking me, shall I use these words in my daily life? Of course not.
Yes, that's a very important question because some of the passages are not appealing to our students. Why aren't they appealing? Not because of the nature of the passage, but because of the nature of our students, right? They might say, أنا مالي بالinternal combustion or consumption, مالي أنا بالphotosynthesis and so on, right or not? But I myself face that with my students. The only thing that really captures their momentum, I mean attention, during the class is that I find a video. If there is no related listening, if there is no lecture before that, I find a video that talks about the same topic and I ask them to show it first. That's the only thing, because visually they can relate to the content of the reading passage more. And they don't understand that when you read, this is for, again, you were not with us, Dr. Reem, when we're talking about it's for academic purposes. It's to build vocabulary that they might see and face in other curriculum, TMAs and so on and so forth. Scientific operations and processes that they need to build some vocabulary about and identify the organization of a text. The only thing to get them interested, I know what you're talking about, is to get them a video about it. Sometimes I did something else. I asked them to present the reading passage. Present it to me. يعني have it assigned as a homework, present to me, and if you want to do it as a teamwork, I will pretend to be a null student, يعني who knows nothing about the passage, and your task is supposed to transfer knowledge and content to me. واسألك. I have every right to ask you. So this pushes the student into, I will scaffold the information needed to read through the passage, okay? I will be prepared. ليه? Because we need to make use of one important feature in all human beings. The worst fear that we all have is the fear for our image. Do we all agree? عشان كده sometimes shy students do not speak, right? Because they're afraid to make mistakes and to be judged by their peers or the tutor. And most of the students are cynical, right? So I need to make use of this human feature. You are going to stand, face the audience, and present a concept. Be ready. You see the point? But I truly feel for what you've said, and these are two workable strategies that I found out applicable in these cases of heavy tasks of readings and so on. The best I wanted to add something. No?
But Dr. Amina, this could be done in level 3, but not
In level 3. Fortunately, we don't have that challenge, as you have not seen the reading passages for the EL1 part. They're quite challenging and very complex scientific terminology and so on. But as for the 099, thank God, and with the modification of theme 4 and theme 5, have you seen them? They are more related to the lives of our students. Dr. Rani.
Also, you can use the reading as an application for the
Sorry?
writing. You can use the reading passages as an application for the writing. So even if the content is not appealing to the students, but we can tell them that we are reading this passage so you can see how this structure is used, because usually you have these kind of mistakes while writing. So now you can see it as well-written passages, how it is organized, things of that sort.
Right, and sometimes some of the
students.
some of the reading passages I saw in EL111 that some of the writing tasks have to do with case studies, right? Develop a case study, and there is a model case study for them to imitate, right? So if you can't go through the case study and you cannot decipher the organization pattern of that case study, this means that you will not be able to duplicate or model the work, right? Yes, thank you for the feedback on that. So what is writing?
Text.
Simply
Text.
writing is how to express yourself with ease and fluency.
With ease and fluency, but bearing in mind 3 preconditions. ايه هما؟ أنا بكتب لي مين؟ and the structure. بكتب لي the purpose, the mean, the reader, and the structure, i.e. will it be a formal thing or an informal thing? طب لو formal, will it be a report or an essay? طب if it is an essay, which type of organization, internal organization for the essay will I adopt? Argumentative, cause and effect, compare and contrast, and so on. So I have autonomy, you know the meaning of an autonomy, to decide and to choose from among the different types of writing. Of course, again, we go back to the difference between General English and EIP. The General English, you write emails, notes, he asks you to do that. Messages, articles, letters, reports sometimes. These are writings in real words, so in the real world. CVs, sometimes you write CVs and so on. But when you have in mind, this is the reader, the purpose, the structure, okay? But for EAP, you write essays, reports, case studies, reviews, articles, sometimes theses, as we all do, abstracts, explanation, description, and procedure. And that's why sometimes, I'll give you one example. Do you remember the students of 099, they're supposed to produce a paragraph of 10 sentences. Our optimum hope for these 10 sentences is to fulfill the grammatical condition of SVO. But sometimes when we correct that, we feel bored. ليه؟ عشان it's the same repeated pattern over and over again. There's no diversity. It's like the non-diversification on the famous vocabulary item important. This topic is very important, and you find important 15 مرة repeated along the essay, right or not? So they lack diversification and enrichment of the vocabulary as much as enrichment of the sentence complexity. That's why the exercise, I tried it myself. The exercise اللي هو I will insert more slots to make that sentence more complex, and you're able to identify. If I say in the afternoon, ايه ده quantifier؟ لا، امال ده ايه؟ The prepositional phrase, right? Can I use it at the beginning? You can use it at the beginning to identify a specific setting, time, or part of the day, and so on. Or even a place on the table. You will find your book. You see the point? So it's very effective to try that activity to insert grammatical and syntactical slots. عشان تقول له, don't worry, you'll be comfortable using that pattern if you know where to slot. Okay? Good. So we write with a reader and purpose and structure in mind. Compare these 3 tasks and tell me about the wording of it. Is it suitable for an academic? Is it a proper question prompt or a writing prompt for an academic writing? No. This is pure impressionistic, right? And it is fit for a general English thing. How about B and C? Do they fit? They do fit. The first one is writing an email, but it has prerequisites to fulfill, right? And the third one is a case study. He told you up front, it's a case study and it is a formal organization of a writing or a piece of writing, right? So we've looked at the what we write, okay? Now we need to look at the how we write. Do you know the tower?
Yes.
The tower, the process of writing.
Yes.
They think, organize, they write, they edit, they write. Actually easier said than done, right? How do they think? How do you ask your students to brainstorm ideas for the writing?
With clusters, maybe.
In clusters or in an outline? I saw that. I was sending some, it was you, Ya Fatma. I was sending some of the samples and I found that this is the essay, this is the page where they wrote their outline and cluster, and it was very effective, okay? But still, sometimes the topic is not familiar to most of the students. They have to do scaffolding again. And if they are not aided with a model, ask them, قولي له يعني ايه self-esteem? If the 099 students self-esteem will brainstorm the concept that we understood about, you need some more information, check. Use your mobile and use your the internet, right? And he will come with ideas. The only thing is that I don't want him to copy directly from it, okay? And students will obey really if they feel that the words are taken into consideration because what they write is important, right? So sometimes you give time for an individual student to brainstorm, to think. Then they discuss, think, pair, and they share with the group, right? So they thought, they wrote some ideas. They know the audience and the purpose. They researched the content. صح? I allow them to. هيجيبوا information ازاي? So they need to consult references and other resources. Even if I was the resource, but I prefer not because they will be dependent on me, okay? طب وبعدين? Write a plan, right? This is where the outline or the clustering comes. Sometimes the process is not as easy as that, as such. Sometimes they take time, give them time. But the more you assign time, the more effective it becomes. Yani, 10 minutes to brainstorm and think and gather some information, followed by writing a plan. Sometimes a student is unwilling to do it. Unwilling. هو مش عايز يعمل كده. هو مش عايز يبقى involved into that matter. How can I handle this? It's important. We'll do that in class. How can I handle an unwilling student? هو مش عايز يكتب. يقول لك ايه؟ ممكن اجيبه المرة الجاية يا دكتور؟ How can I handle such a case?
I put them in groups.
إيه؟
I put them in groups to push them.
بس هتلاقيه قاعد idle كده.
Sometimes I go and sit beside him. And
Don't
I
you
try to
think
ask
it's
him.
embarrassing?
No, I would ask him questions to make him like.
I would assign
involved. What do you
roles.
think?
I would assign marks. Typical. صح? I would assign marks. Or make a prize for the winning team, the winning group, and so on. I did all of that with no response whatsoever at his part. I'm an EBCB and take him on a one-to-one meeting. This is very effective. Yani, I don't want to embarrass you in front of the rest of the class. I don't want to show that you're not working. I don't want you to hate me or hate attending the class. So take him in on a one-to-one meeting. He might have at that moment something that bothers him, but he might have this as an attitude, general attitude all through the course. I will get to know when I have that one-to-one meeting with him. No scolding, none of that. Just listen to him. انت ليه مش عايز تعمل التاسك؟ He will tell you. أصل أنا تعبان. So next time I'll expect you to be better. Next time he disappears. It happens, right? Or he gives you any excuse. We have to tell our students what's in it for them, because what happens is that the students deal with the English language as a prerequisite, and that was a point of discussion we raised there. هم بيتعاملوا مع اللغة الإنجليزية as a course I have to pass, especially the EL 111. ليه؟ عشان to open 4 core courses, so it's not a needed skill, right or not? So I have to highlight to them discreetly how English is important, because it's a transferred skill and knowledge to the rest of his life. He will write emails in English. He will write reports in English. He will have to respond in English. He will have to give presentations in English. He will have to research some concepts in English. Dr. Lim, you wanted to say
I
something?
have a question regarding the thinking process. I face with my students, and I think that the majority of the tutors face with their students, that our students think in Arabic and they translate what they mean. And if you try to advise them, please try to think in English. They ask me, what are the tools, what are the techniques which I can apply to think in English?
Resort to the basic sentence structure, the syntax, SVO.
Okay.
SVO.
Okay.
مش عايزة منك غير SVO or SV complement. The book is on the table. That's a typical example of a complement, prepositional phrase, okay? The man is famous. Another complement in the form of an adjective, okay? He is above, or whatever, an adverb, you see? So now if he does not have the tool, write a simple sentence that follows that basic structure on the board. Don't think in Arabic and translate literally. Look at that and make your sentence fit that pattern, right? So the tower, thinking, organizing, and writing. What's cohesion?
To use linking words to
Unity.
yes.
Unity, and usually among sentences, right? What is coherence? The whole thing, but the whole idea is and the paragraphs, right? Okay. So, يلا نكتب. It's not a perfect thing, I understand, and I would accept it. Let's be very open and clear with our students. يلا نكتب. I understand it's not going to be complete or very comprehensive. It needs some polishing. That's why we have the editing part, where we have to. You remember when we used to do the rewrite? It was an effective experiment, صح؟ يجيب الاسي تعال أنا صححت لك ده. Correct, make it error free, avoiding the mistakes, right? Right? I might do that for this term as well. Edit and rewrite, and of course the final result or the final draft is going to be better than, if not 100%, it's at least 70% or 60%, which is satisfying enough. But sometimes when you write a question prompt, a writing prompt on the board, and you ask them, Yalla, this is the assignment, I will collect the essays next time, bye bye. He's thrown into hot water. يعني هو مش عارف هو يعمل ايه. وهتلاقيه جايب ready made essay, or he asked copied from the internet, or he asked one of the clever colleagues to write it for him, right? But if you invest time with them, they will fear for the image and they will do something to please you because they're afraid for the image, right? So this, we write having in mind who and who and who, purpose, reader, and the organization and structure, and the implementation of the process goes as such. All right? Let's have a look at one of the writing tasks, and it is very important. The last exercise, let's look at it because it depicts this. بصوا على page 91 و 92. Look at the activities ABC, and tell me how are these activities structured. Page 91, do you have it?
Yeah, we have 91.
91?
Yes.
Okay, page 91. How are these activities corresponding to what he said? A and B and C.
This is the thinking part.
I want the general idea, the
Yes.
thinking part, and the generating ideas. Excellent. Huh? In pairs, حتى هو قايل in pairs. B.
This is organizing.
So he has to use this, right? So learning new vocabulary, this is scaffolding part. يعني I learn more. I need some vocabulary. Let me learn some needed vocabulary, and this goes into the organization. Because I know that this vocabulary item goes for this idea or that supporting ideas, right? And I need the same vocabulary for
Right
the actual writing process, right? But I'm sorry that, and he's even giving him on C needed vocabulary to help him with the writing, right? Okay. On page E, for example, I'm sorry, on the next page, he's providing him with developing critical thinking, right? Can you see it? Developing critical thinking. هو عايز يعمل منه إيه؟ he wants him to judge the ideas he incorporated or included and to do a rewriting thing. ليه? Sometimes we write off-topic sentences and ideas, so cross that out and so on. And بصوا بقى على culminating. I have it. 96. بصوا on page 96. بصوا case study. هو كاتب له thinking. Case study 2 or another case study. Organizing, writing, and rewriting, which is the same as the tower process of writing. So usually the last activities, and we all know that the last activities are the most difficult and most challenging because they're supposed to be culminating activities, right? All right. So he has a model, if not the full text, at least sentences, right? He analyzes and uses some of these sentences or vocabulary items, and he writes a parallel text sometimes, right? Any questions so far? Sure? Dr. Lee.
One of the comments I have about the book, or in fact about the 3 books of the 3 levels,
Yes.
that they don't have course to train the students on how to write well, how to write a good thesis statement, for example, a good topic sentence, the difference between the descriptive and the narrative. And sometimes I try to use other books and to give them handouts. Yes.
It's recommended
Yes.
because we cannot expect that each and every single word to be spelled out. هم مش عارفين الجورنت series. What types of essays do we wish our students to master for their TMAs? يعني احنا عايزين argumentative, expository, and opinion, right or not?
Yes.
Right? Now, what they give is general tips on how to write a thesis statement, how to write a topic sentence, صح? How to do editing. These are general tips for all types of essays, right? But not for a specific genre of essay. But they have supporting material on how to write a case study, statement, report. I saw that in one of the units and so on. Because these are typical pieces of writing, academic pieces of writing. But we agreed that we need these 3 different types of essays writing, and that's why we need to supplement. But it provides support material on specific sentence labeling or functions within the essay. Right? I need to draw your attention to one important thing. I need you to share that in class with your students. This is the skillsinenglish.com. This is the website for the online resources. Okay? Now, if you look carefully at it, I'll go to home. So, we have English skills for university level 2 and 1, of course. This is 097 and 099. But look carefully, progressive skills in English and progressive skills in English, Arab Open University Special Edition. This is not closed. This is even for our students to view and use if they wish to. But I'll direct my students to use the Arab Open University Special Edition. Enter. This is the students' resources. We have reading, listening, grammar, vocabulary, and theme related, and even the tape transcripts, okay? And this is the teachers' resources. Even the teachers' resources are not closed for the students. Basically, they are flashcards related to listening or speaking or writing, theme related, okay? And you can use them in class by cutting them into pieces, make copies of them, distribute them among. They're very helpful indeed, and they spare you a lot of trouble of making your own activities, okay? But the most important thing is the student resources. هنا ما فيش flash player, but for the listening and the vocabulary, he listens. The most important feature that is added to the online resources for this time is that I can make the activity or skip it. مش عايز أعمله, okay? And when I make the activity, I ask for a report of check answers, okay? And I can have another chance. I re-attempt the activity or the exercise. Maybe my score will get better. And I can have an explanation of what went wrong, okay? So it's very useful tool for our students. Please direct the attention of the students to visit Skills in English from the very beginning of the class. Do you have any questions? I was really happy to have you and to have some of our Bahrain colleagues. I hope that the session was fruitful. It brought to your attention some tips or some information, knowledge about the structure of the Garnet series, and this is the main purpose of the whole workshop and so on. You have in your hands the whole kit with the full presentations. You go through them at your pace at home, and if you have any questions, you can get back to me. Thank you for attending. Bye-bye. بجد؟ go ahead. استني طيب معايا مش فين IT thank you for reminding me. فين stop بتاع